fossils throughout the years, is it actually what they tell us? It's gradual speciation evolving from one species to another, from the fossil fuels and beyond. I'll leave the rest fossil fuel bus for record. Sorry, fossil record, and not fuels. Sorry, it become fuels later on if it's left. Fossil records. I always do this. Fossil records and beyond. So, Fadi.
Thank you, Abuna. Thank you very much. It's nearly afternoon. It's a good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting us to this lovely place and with this lovely company. This is the second talk for the day, and I'm going to shift gears a bit, and we're going to, as Abuna said, study a topic called the fossil record. Okay, I've put this talk in the form of questions, and we'll go through the answers of the questions one by one, at the end of which, if you have any further questions, please do let me know. So what are we going to discuss in this talk? Number one, what are the main premises of the theory of evolution? I will try to summarize what Abuna Michael said in the previous talk about the main premises in Darwin's theory, and what is a fossil, and what is the fossil record, and what's a transitional fossil or a transitional link, and does the fossil record does what we found in the layers of the earth support what Darwin said about in his theory of evolution? What is the Cambrian explosion? Did we find any transitional fossil? And how can we be sure that the fossil record is complete? So what are the main of the theory of evolution? Number one is the common ancestor, that all the living organisms share either one or few common ancestor. And this is the first diagram of an evolutionary tree. This was drawn by Charles Darwin himself in 1837. And this is from his first notebook on transmutation of species. And he theorized, or he hypothesized, that we all come from one ancestor. And then we branched into a tree. Charles Darwin, he published the idea of the tree of life in his book, The Origin of Species, or On the Origin of Species, in 1959. 7 years later, a German zoologist, his name is very well known for anyone who studies evolution, his name is Ernest Haeckel. He drew up a much more comprehensive tree, what we see now, and represented the Earth's wealth of species in the context of evolution. So number one is a common ancestor. Number two is descent with slow modification. Like Abuna was saying, that Darwin theorized that as species descent, they modify according to natural selection, which is the third premise, that every population there is a variation, some of which are inherited. Individual organisms with best adaptation are most likely to survive and reproduce, as he said about the Galapagos island finches on the Galapagos Island. And another example is, for example, if there is a heavy winter, for example, in the old ages, the sheep with the woolliest, who has the best, the thickest wool, they will survive. And the less adapted organism are less likely to pass on their adaptation, which is the survival of the fittest. And then came the Neo-Darwinism. All right, so Darwin didn't talk anything about genetics, did not know, at that point in time, we didn't know anything about genetics and how we inherit the characters. And then Mendel, as Abuna said, came along very shortly after Darwin published his On the Origin of Species, and that was 1960, so 1 year after. Gregor Mendel, the Austrian monk, he presented his work on the green peas, which shows that the genes are separate entities and they do not blend. And then later on we discovered that the genes can mutate by changing the genetic code, because there are certain codes that we give them letters on the genes, and if you change this code you can change the character that this gene can express, and then they produce different characters. Mutations are known to cause small-scale variations in the characters over millions of years. They can change into large scale changes, or what we can call macroevolution. And that is essentially neo-Darwinism. Okay. So these are the premises of Darwin, which is common ancestor, descent with slow modification, and natural selection. And this is how, and then the neo-Darwinists came along and then they said, oh, there is a mutation background or mutation of the genes background to the observations documented by Darwin. Our second question was what's a fossil? What exactly is a fossil? A fossil is any preserved remains, all right? When we dig the ground, we find a tooth, we find a skull, we find evidence of a fossilized animal or a plant, then we call it a fossil. A fossil is any preserved remains, impression, or a trace of once living thing from the past geological age. We'll go through the geological ages very quickly because you need to understand what are the layers of the earth and what each layer represent in terms of the age of the earth. Examples can be a bone, a shell, an exoskeleton, a stone, an imprint of animal or microbe. So, what is the fossil record? The fossil record is, as you can imagine, is a term used by paleontologists. Who are the paleontologists? These are the people who spend their lives looking for fossils. They dig the ground, they dig out the ground to try to look for remains that represented people or animals or plants or microbes in the older ages. Those are the paleontologists. Refer to total number of fossils that has been discovered, as well as to the information derived from them arranged chronologically. So the fossil record is a huge register of all the fossils that we found, and the interpretation. Like, what's this? This is in this year we found, for example, a tooth in this area or in this place, and this represented this and that. So this is the fossil record. The geologic time scale is a very important topic with that regard, just to understand what we're talking about. It's a representation of time based upon the rock record of Earth. So each layer in the Earth represents a particular number of years in the age of the Earth. The time scale has been developed through the study of rock layers and the observation of their relationships. So they found out, the geologist could tell from the change of one layer to the other, the change from one particular age to the other, if that makes sense. The four main areas that are of interest for us when it comes to the fossil record are these. So the Proterozoic, and then the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic and Cenozoic, all the way up to humans. What's a phyla? Because we're going to talk, I'm just setting the lay of the land when it comes to terminology, so that we can embark on our topic and you understand what I'm saying. The term phyla refers to the division in the biological classification system. So whoever studied biology or medicine, they know what I'm talking about, that all the living organisms are classified just for the ease of studying, and they constitute the highest categories of biological classification in the animal kingdom, with each exhibiting a unique architectural, organizational blueprint or a structured body plan. So they divided them according to their body plan, okay? And in biology we have 35 phyla of living organism. 27 are featured in the fossil record already. So we could see animals from 27 out of 35 phyla in the fossil record, including, for example, the arthropods. So these are all, they have similar exoskeleton and body plan, so they put them together in a single phylum, and they call it arthropods, like the crab, the spider, the fly, the lobster, scorpion, beetle, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. One of the biggest phyla is the chordates. It has fish, frogs, and rabbits, and so on and so forth. Okay, so next, what is a transitional fossil or a missing link? So anyone who reads about evolution or the theory of evolution will have to come across this term because it's quite important. So Darwin's theory is all about gradualism, as you can get from the main premises, that it is very small changes over a very, very long time. Okay, this is number one. Slow change in the characteristics of the living organism from one form to the other, passing through several stages in between, which carry common characteristics from both the ancestor and the end product. For example, if I'm going to change an ape to a human being, okay, that did not happen overnight. That happened over a very long period of time, through which the ape acquired or had different changes over a very, very long period of time, one change at a time. At the end product is a human being. So if that is the case, then we need to find these transitional forms from the ape, from a full ape to a full human. That makes sense, right? So these are the missing links, and the missing links, or the transitional fossil or the transitional forms, will have characters from the apes and have characters from humans, and so on and so forth. Like, if, for example, if you change from a duck to a dog, for example, okay, you have to find numerous, not just one or two or three, you should find numerous forms between the duck and the dog, okay? At one form, for example, the duck lost the beak and had a big nose, something like that. And then the next form, it maintained the same thing but lost the webs and had the claws, something like that. And that is what we call the transitional fossil. So when we study the layers of the ground, when we dig out the ground, we should normally find a numerous array of these transitional fossilized animal forms at each layer, which documents the evolution of the living creatures according to the tree of life that Darwin theorized. So here comes the question. Does the fossil record support the theory of evolution or not? What we see, and what I'm going to elaborate a bit more in my talk, is that the fossil record is mostly a pattern of explosions, a pattern of rapid change or rapid appearance of organisms, rather than a change from one form to the other. New kinds of organisms appear abruptly without any precursors, and I'll show you evidence of that. We found creatures with complete body plans. Again, this is one term that you need to understand when you study evolution. A body plan is like a blueprint, okay? They didn't come, we couldn't find forms that started with one-celled organism into a complete complex body plan. We immediately found a body plan, as I will show you in a second. We didn't find innumerable number of missing links as promised by Darwin. Again, I'll show you that. Darwin himself said that the number of intermediate varieties which have formerly existed be truly enormous. They have to be enormous. According to my theory, guys, we should find a lot of this missing links. Why then is not every geological formation or layer in Earth and every stratum is full of such intermediate links? Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this is perhaps the most obvious and serious objection which can be urged against the theory. Who said that? Charles Darwin. Okay, let's talk about the Cambrian explosion. So again, the Cambrian explosion, we will find it here, or the Cambrian time or geological age, we'll find it in this part of the Earth, which is 540 to 490 million years ago, around. The website of the Natural History Museum, they defined the Cambrian explosion happened more than 500 million years ago. It was when most of the major animal groups started to appear in the fossil record. Boom! Just like that. A time of rapid expansion of different forms of life on Earth. We found so many highly complex animals in this layer without any precursors in the layers below. Does that make sense? For example, we found the brachiopods. Brachiopod is with its two shells. Again, can you see how complex it is? Okay, with its two shells, looks like a clam or an oyster from the outside, but it's very different inside. It has gonads, mantle cavity, gut, mouth, and then anus. All of that found suddenly in this layer. Another well-known body plan or animal that we found in the Cambrian layer is the trilobite. Even more sophisticated was the trilobite. 3 longitudinal lobes, across its head, and a body divided in 3 parts: head, chest, and tail, the former 2 consisting of as many as 30 segments. It had a pair of legs for every pleural groove and another 3 pair at the head. Most dramatic of all were the compound eyes. So the trilobite had a compound eyes found on even some of the early trilobites. A compound eye that afforded them 360 field of vision. And we found the trilobite where? Just in the Cambrian layer. Was there any less developed trilobite in the Precambrian layers? No. We found nothing there. So this sudden emergence continues into the other epochs or layers as well. So the Cambrian was the most impressive. That is still up until this day is really puzzling to all the scientists or the paleontologists. The Triassic, for example, time saw new dinosaur species, turtles, reptiles, flying reptiles, crocodiles, and even mammals seeming to appear suddenly without any precursors in the deeper layers. So this sudden emergence repeats throughout the fossil record, which is largely devoid of any significant precursor forms in the record.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Does that mean that there was creation throughout the time? Creation happening?
Well, that's the implication. Yes, is the answer. Okay. So now so this is the positive evidence against evolution, is that where are these links? Where are these transitional forms? Okay. Charles Doolittle Walcott, he's a paleontologist. In 1909, he discovered the Burgess Shale in British Columbia, Canada. He collected over 65,000 fossils from the Burgess Shale belonging to the Cambrian area, showing organisms with complete body plans from how many phyla out of the 35? 20 phyla out of the 35. All right, 20 phyla. Another well-known Cambrian site in China. It was discovered in the 1980s in the Yunnan province in China. Approximately 200 species of hard and soft tissued fossils have been recovered, dating back to the Cambrian period. And so this is the Cambrian layers. They looked at the Precambrian layers, they found nothing, no forms. And this site, compared to the Burgess Shale, had more variety of body plans, even more than the Burgess Shale in Canada, more complex forms, more complex animals in terms of the internal structure. Animals appeared more explosively, more abruptly. And it literally turned the Darwin trees of life upside down, because the Darwin's tree of life said we evolved from the less complex to the more complex. Suddenly we found the most complex forms right at the beginning. And these are other Cambrian shales in China, Mongolia, Siberia, Spain. Well, it was less impressive than the China site and the Canadian site, but still showed again the same thing over and over again, the same theme of the abrupt appearance of complete body plans, complex animal forms right at the beginning with no precursors in the deeper layers. So how can we marry the Cambrian explosion and natural selection? The ability of natural selection to produce specific change. So we say that the natural selection will move the generation or the forms from one form to the other based on randomly arising variation or a character, randomly arising characters, and the heritability is based on the heritability of these variations with a competition for the survival. However, as nature selects the successful variation, then the features of the population change, as I told you about the sheeps and the winter, for example. Okay, so the sheeps with the thick stool are likely to survive the cold winter, and then they are likely to pass on the genes responsible for the thick wool to the next generations, and so on and so forth. Darwin conceded that major variations in forms, which is called macromutations or macroevolution, inevitably produce deformity and death. And that's what we see now, and what's proved time and time again, that rapid change or rapid mutation are usually lethal or bad or lead to deformity, and this deformity people are unable to survive, or the animals are unable to survive. The key is minor variation over a long period of time. Okay, so Darwin said no, this cannot happen over a short period of time. If it happens over a short period of time, the outcome is bad. It has to be small variations over a long period of time. So to get to a trilobite from a single-celled organism by natural selection operating on small step-by-step variation would require countless transitional forms and failed biological experiments over vast stretches of geologic time. So to move from this form to that form, we have to go through several changes. Some of them will fail, and then the trilobite will die because it's a rapid mutation or a bad mutation. Some of them will survive, and those who survived, another change will happen, and then it might fail, and then they will die. Do you understand the idea? To evolve from a single-celled organism or a common ancestor or a primordial soup, you call it what you want to call it, into a complex body plan like the trilobite. So, the Cambrian era spanned between 540 and 490 million years ago. The 20 phyla appeared within 10 million years. 16 completely new phyla within 6 million years. But on the evolutionary time scale, that is a huge amount of anatomical innovation within a very short period of time, believe it or not. Believe me on this point, because all the evolutionists will consider that this cannot happen, or all the biologists. This cannot be natural selection. To have 16 complete new phyla within 6 million years. This is a very, very short period of time. Back to Darwin. Darwin said, the abrupt manner in which whole groups of species suddenly appear in certain formations, he's referring to the Cambrian layers, has been urged by several paleontologists as a fatal objection to the belief in the transmutation or evolution of species. If numerous species belonging to the same genera or families or phyla have really started life all at once, the fact would be fatal to the theory of descent with slow modification through natural selection, and this is what we see in the Cambrian explosion. So the Cambrian explosion, many fossils. So this is the Cambrian layer. We find all of these guys, and then this is the boundary between the Cambrian and Precambrian, and you can see that the Precambrian, nothing, absolutely nothing. We should find not just the missing links, but innumerable links spanning from the alleged ancestor. Where is the ancestor? The ancestor should be somewhere here, to the presumed descendants. Instead, the stereographic column, this is called the stereographic column of all the layers, seem to document abrupt appearance of the earliest animals. So, the other question is, did we find any transitional fossil? Okay. There are very few fossils with features that are shared between different organisms. But as they say, a broken clock is right twice a day. But let's go through these forms anyway. Before we go into these forms, I want to explain what's called Vibera's blunder. In 1990, someone called Tim Berra wrote a biology book in which he compared the fossil record to a series of automobile models, saying that if you compare a 1953 and a 1954 Corvette side by side, and then a 1954 and a 1955 side by side, then it becomes obvious that there has been a descent with modification. I hope you will agree with me. He said that this is exactly what the paleontologists do with the fossil record, the evolutionary paleontologists. The point being that a designer could have been involved in this process, and the only way to prove that this Corvette evolved from this Corvette, that this one just evolved from this one without involvement of any designer or intelligent person, is to show the natural forces of rust, wind, weather and gravity turning one form of Corvette to the other. Showing the mere picture of two Corvettes side by side does not exclude a manufacture or a manufacturing process, if that makes sense. Now, to the transitional fossils or links that we found. Does anyone recognize the Archaeopteryx? You will always find it in the biology books in our secondary school. It was discovered in 1861 in Germany, an animal with feathered wings of a bird, but has teeth and tail of a dinosaur. And it has long been hailed as a transitional form between reptiles and birds. Literally, the scientists fell on their knees in awe when this fossil was found in a German quarry. However, paleontologists pretty much agree now that this is just a bird from a totally extinct group of birds. This is just a bird. Birds are very different from reptiles. Their breathing system, their bone structure, their lungs, their distribution of weight and muscles, and so on and so forth. So there is some sort of an agreement that Archaeopteryx is just a bird. The legend of Java Man. Late last century, a Dutch physician, Eugene Dubois, he set sail to the East Indies, to the Dutch East Indies, now known as Indonesia, completely captured by the theory of evolution. He had come to believe for some reason that he would find the missing link. He went to Indonesia to find the missing link. 1891, he found 3 teeth and a large skull cap. 1892, he found a large thigh bone around 15 meters deeper to where he found the teeth and the skull cap. Eugene Dubois published few papers depicting the 3 fossils as being one creature who he named Pithecanthropus erectus, or the erect ape man. Naturally, the bones did not show, however, their owner or owners had much body hair or not, yet drawings of Java man all showed the required amount of hair. So we don't know anything about this Java man, about the amount of hair, but obviously all the proponents of evolution, they drew the right amount of hair on each form moving from the ape up to human. Although no face bones had been found, suitably half-ape, half-man features were reconstructed in artists' drawings. So these are artists who managed to draw, you know, a slow change of the facial features from ape to a half-ape, half-man, and all the way to a man face. But this did not feature on the skull cap and the 3 teeth and the femur that they found for the Jaffa man. For some reason, this parade of ape-like creatures that morph into the modern human beings has since been used in the school curricula and book covers. But the question comes, was the Java man the missing link? Skull cap, teeth and femur does not necessarily belong to the same creatures. They were found in different layers. By today's standards, the Dubois excavation should have been disqualified because to be accepted as a fossil, you have to document the layers that you found, how many days did you dig, where and when and how, and so on and so forth. But by the standards, by the paleontological standards, his excavations should all be disqualified. The skull cap was distinctly human, reflected a brain capacity well within the range of human living today, and you can find a reference to that here. 342-page report from a fact-finding expedition of 19 evolutionists demolished Dubois claims completely about the Java man. And you can find the reference here as well. Another missing link was Lucy. Several hundred pieces of fossilized bone discovered in Ethiopia by paleontologist Donald Johnson and his graduate student Tom Gray, 1974. Lucy is dated by evolutionists to be 375 to 3 million years old. These are the references again if you want to see how the Lucy is, you know, the theory or the legend of Lucy has been demolished almost completely. Many people are not aware of the subjectivity that is involved in placing or in piecing the shattered fossil remains together. For example, two evolutionists stated with regard to Lucy that the sacrum, the bone that they in the bottom bone of the spine is called the sacrum, and the articular region of the alium are shattered into numerous small fragments such that the origin is very difficult to elucidate. What they are trying to say is these are like very, very small pieces. Does it belong to one ape, Lucy, or several people? We can't really tell. It's not surprising that reconstruction by Lovejoy and Schmidt show marked differences. So another two paleontologists, Lovejoy and Schmidt, they did not concur. What they do is they bring all the bone pieces together and they try to put it together and they fill the spaces with plaster of Paris, which is the plaster of Paris is used to, you know, الجبس اللي بيجبسوا بيه الإيدين والرجلين. They fill it up with plaster of Paris and they say, oh, that's the pelvis, that's the femur, that's the spine, and so on and so forth. Not only do these bone pieces have no dates on them, but no one can absolutely be sure that it's from the same individual. And this comes from that guy,
Can't they do a DNA test on it?
Say again?
Can they not do a DNA test on it?
I don't think they did.
It's usually the DNA is very shattered when it is that long. Plus, bone from DNA that long, 200,350, very difficult to obtain correctly. So there will be a lot of artifact into it, and they will be worried to disclaim that it's human.
More importantly, Buna said that there is huge similarity between the DNAs in animals, in different animals, apes and humans and stuff. That doesn't mean that this is an ape. I can't tell that this bone is coming from an ape or this bone is coming from a human being. The third guy here, he said that her bones are what would be expected on the basis of creation. Lucy's fossils remains match up remarkably well with the bones of a pygmy chimp. All right. So again, Lucy is hailed in the biology books as a transitional form between apes and humans. But if you, with a very, very little research, you find out that they are unfortunately not. So we are nearly done. And then comes the question, because Darwin said that Darwin's answer for the fossil record that didn't show any transitional form, that, oh, we are not done yet, guys, just keep on digging, you will eventually find something. So there is an important question: how can we be sure that the fossil record is complete enough? So we measure the total number of fossils found versus the type of fossils we found. With each new fossil, we find there is a good chance that it represents a new type of fossil or will add up to the knowledge. However, at some point, the curve will start to level out because we find more fossils, but the types are the same. Does that make sense? For example, if you embark on, if you today say, I want to start collecting stamps, all right? So the first few years of you collecting stamps, you will be collecting more stamps of different types or different forms. So your curve will start to go up or continuously go up. At some point, you will find that, oh, I have this stamp, or I have this stamp, or I have this stamp. That's when your curve will start to level out or plateau. Does that make sense? And we could see this already on the fossil record. So we can make assumptions, like, for example, these transitional forms are there, we should have found them by, if the transitional forms are there, we should have found them. This can be applied on any type of collection. For example, if you're collecting stamps, as I said before. Now, in conclusion, Darwin realized from day one that the fossil record is the greatest risk to his theory. It is not just the colossal number of intermediate forms of animals known to Darwin were not found. Instead, what has been found are entirely new animal forms, exhibiting a complex body plans, anatomical structures which Darwin didn't know about. Most importantly, they appeared suddenly, without any precursory forms in the layers below. And by that I finish. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Ferdy, I've got, it's not directly related, but there was someone who was hoping to come today but who's not well, and he wrote the paper that I shared, I think, with you guys. So there's a question, I think the question that it poses is there a reading of the creation account in Genesis that's consistent with evolution, and that he argues it's not helpful that we say it's creation versus evolution, because we then make it that you either believe in science or you believe in superstition, and that makes sort of almost we discredit our religion because of our refusal to accept evolution.
So can I very politely defer this question till after Farid's talk, because Farid's talk, so Farid will elaborate extensively about creation and evolution, and then we have to tackle this. However, that said, in the same paper, Okay, he referred to a location called Wadi al-Hitan. If anyone read the paper, I encourage everyone to read this paper because, I mean, I really wanted to meet Ramez, because the whole idea of what we're doing is not to push any person in just one stream. Okay, we don't want that. What we want is like one of the apologetic institutions. Their motto was to make the believers think and the thinkers believe. Okay, we are not here to say, oh, this is what you need to believe in, and that's it. Okay, no, that's not what we want. We want to encourage people to read, to examine the evidence themselves, and believe what they see is more relevant or is stronger. So Ramez wrote a lovely paper. We disagree with quite a few of what he said, but still a very, very well written manuscript. He referred to Wadi Hitan as one of the locations in Egypt that has transitional links. So I have to answer that, okay? Because it forms, it shows links of whales at different stages. Started off with whales, I think with hind feet or something like that, up to whales with no feet and so on and so forth. We do not disagree with that because it started off as a whale and ended off as a whale. Does that make sense? We agree with change over time. We agree with change over time as in it started off, for example, we don't see trilobites and brachiopods now. Okay, so we agree that some changes has happened over the years and some animals came to existence and then extinct and so on and so forth. As long as it started off as one thing and ended up as the same thing. Okay, we do not believe in macroevolution as in, as I said, one animal completely metamorphed into a completely different animal. And we showed why. And I hope that it did sound convincing, but nevertheless, so we as it happens, Wadi Hitan, we don't have a problem with that. Okay, that because it started off as a fish, ended off as a fish, had some foot or whatever. That doesn't mean that it started off as a dog, ended up as a whale. Okay, does that make sense? There's a huge difference. But we'll come to the parts around creation and the first few chapters after, and I'm hoping that will incite more questions. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah. Did you say there was no fossils found before the Cambrian explosion?
There is no precursors of the Cambrian body plans in the Precambrian
There
areas.
was fossils.
There was fossils. I think there was fossils. Yes.
Yeah, it was. Okay.
But do you know what I meant by the precursors?
You mean little things that grew into these other things?
Yeah. So more primitive forms of the animals that we found in the Cambrian area.
So what your point is then that one day a creature just appeared.
Yes.
Fully formed.
Yes. With a complex body plan.
With a complex body plan.
It's not my idea. It has been proved over and over and over and over again.
And this is one of the things that the third way evolutionists are saying. The Cambrian explosion cannot explain what we have with the Darwinian or New Darwinian theory.
No, it's not about explaining. It denies, it demolishes evolution completely.
They say that's why they wanted a different kind of, rather than gradualism, they want a different way to explain the Cambrian explosion. So until now, they're actually trying to make a new theory to revive the idea that there is kind of no God, but there is.
So, and also there is a part, but for the sake of time, but from the scientific from the point of view of being scientifically honest, there has been some other theories, but they all failed. In terms of explaining the Cambrian explosion, there's something called the artifact hypothesis, that this guy, for example, Walcott, who discovered the Burgess Shale, he after his discovery said, oh, hang on, this throws evolution out of the window. Let me come up with a theory that might explain why what I found. And he said, oh no, you know what? There is an artifact hypothesis which says that the Precambrian animals were offshore, and then the ocean came up and washed them out and kept them in the sediments, in the sediment rocks at the bottom of the ocean. But then at the same time, the artifact hypothesis was demolished later on, because all the offshore, oil drills, okay, that goes into the very deep into the bottom of the ocean, all what comes out of these drills is actually examined by geologists, and it has been examined time and time again. We didn't find any Precambrian precursor. And there was another theory by someone called Stephen Jay Gould. It's very, very well known evolutionist, called punctated equilibrium. He said, no, you know what? It happened in the form of jumps of a very, very small period of time. But again, the rest of the geologists, evolutionists, turned their back to him and said, oh, hang on. This is not what Darwin said. We know that a massive, a quick jump in characters means deformity and death. You can't be saying that. And they shut him up, basically, okay? At the end, Stephen Jay Gould, they sort of denounced his, or not denounced, he was a bit skeptical about evolution. Do you know what I mean? So there is a lot to be said here, but just for the sake of time. Did I answer your question? No.
You answered it in your very own way, yeah?
Yeah. It's not my way, it's what the science says. But anyway, any other question?
Yeah, I just want to comment on Ma's question about the paper we sent. Okay, so as you can see, the paper faced at the start that evolution is a fact, and it is establishing its feet every day. This was in the introduction, and based on this, he considered. And based on this, he considered that we are struggling against science. Okay, no, we aren't struggling against science. We are trying to analyze science and see what is happening. As you can see from what we are saying, we don't have any strong evidence, we don't have missing links, we don't have, from different aspects, okay? We don't have strong evidence about the Darwinian evolution. So we had Darwinians, we had near-Darwinians, we have new Darwinians now, and they are searching for other things. So do you think we are standing against science, or we are trying to understanding the science correctly? This is different points, okay? Yeah.
Okay. Yes, please.
Just a couple quick questions, if I may.
Sure.
The first point is, I think Mark touched on that already. Does this mean that the fact that we find fully formed organisms and there are millions of years in between them, does this simply and has got to mean that creation took millions of years?
No, listen, so again, we will go through the talk about the creation and time, okay? But we found a 20 phyla developing over a particular period of time, okay? And this particular period of time, again, I know that the millions of years, it does sound like a very long period of time, but 20 phyla over 6 million years is not, by the geologic point of view, it's a very short period of time. As a matter of fact, there was one geologist who explained it by an example, and he the end result was these are few seconds in our current time, if that makes sense. That equates to few seconds.
But I'm just saying, marrying this with the 6th day.
Yes, that's the young Earth. He's talking about.
Yeah, but we will explain, that's what I'm saying. So again, Farid will speak about the periods of time and how do we understand Yom and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Is that okay? Can we defer it till the next hour?
Yeah, that's
And the second question?
I'm trying to think now. I'm sure it will come back.
Okay.
Farid, from the fossil
Yeah.
record, not you. Fossil records. The dinosaur appeared. Did they have any precursors or just appeared? So all this strata of different layers, all the time happening eruptions, or do you see kind of
Not as impressive as the Cambrian, but as I said, this pattern is a pattern through all the layers. Okay, but when it came to the Cambrian, it was everyone just stood speechless. They said, "Oh, what is that?" You know.
My question was, I'm just wondering, are we putting too much emphasis on fossils? Because if there is an intermediate organisms, some of them should be alive. I mean, you can have like a continuum between different species. So why do we assume that there must have
Because we don't find them now. So essentially, that's what Abuna meant by the end comment at the in his talk, that with this number of mutations that we see every year in this number of individuals coming on Earth, we should at least find some change or some evolution, which we don't.
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
living organisms, not just fossils.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But because they say no, this is a short period of time. Let's just go back into what was there before. Okay, so we went back and we didn't find anything. Thomas,
Just
you had a
wanted to ask as
question.
well, so regarding Rames's paper that you were talking about, and you were saying it's not, we can accept the idea that it's, you know, from this whale
Change
with
over
legs
time.
to another whale because it's a fish from a fish. We can, that's okay because it's not a whale from a, you know, a dog to a whale or whatever.
Yeah.
With the same regard, with like the idea that people talk about apes into humans,
Yeah.
that they're both from the kingdom of Animalia, or they're both mammals. Is it not too far of a stretch then to say that could have been from there to there? I think
Yes, it is.
Same idea.
It is. It is.
Is it too far of a stretch?
It is very far, and it is not supported by any evidence of what we see now. It is far. It is because it's a macroevolution, okay, and we don't see it. It's not, as far as this talk is concerned, we couldn't see that at all. And even the ones that there are other transitional forms which I didn't mention, like the Piltdown man hawks. If you Google it, because
Google it, I've seen him.
yeah,
It was in
and
Manchester University.
exactly,
That
it's a
was John.
hoax.
I don't believe it.
Yeah,
He said
yeah,
it was a bogman. Made it
Yeah.
up. Rubbish.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for your report.
Who ran that? This blow with a fuck.
Just read about it. Read about it. It's
Oh,
an
go to
absolute
Manchester University and see
absolute
for
hoax.
yourself.
Is he still there?
Absolute hoax.
He
And
was on loan, I think.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I just, because you were saying from a fish to a fish, that's what I was thinking from
Yeah. 'cause
monkey to human, but like you're saying, there is no evidence to support
there's
that.
no evidence to support it, and as we will hopefully, I know there is a slide on Farid's talk about mutation, and it will kill this mutation thing altogether, and how to get a useful mutation. What's the rate, or what's the incidence of useful mutation? It's
So
literally
if, just from a practical sense, if someone came up to you and said, oh, humans have evolved from monkeys or whatever, just like how you just say that there's no evidence, no real evidence to
no solid
support that.
evidence at all to support this. Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, don't take my word for granted, please. That's what I'm saying. It's here to instigate the critical thinking. Look at the evidence and weigh it yourself.
And also, if you have any
I did-
questions, send it to
I
us.
did what I needed to do. I read all what is there, and this is what we found as a team. But please do your research. Don't rely on anyone telling you anything.
On that subject, so that any books that you recommend that
From the point of view of the fossil record and what we found from this aspect, there is a book by Professor Stephen Meyer, okay, from the Discovery Institute. It's called Darwin's Doubt. It's a slightly big book, so get ready. But it's a wonderful resource that gathers everything into one piece. Darwin's Doubt.
Can you tell the email address for the code team so everyone, if anyone...
Yeah, it's courteuk@gmail.com, as simple as COAT, court, as in court, UK@gmail.com. If you have any questions, or if you have any comments, or if you want to add something to us, please do email us.
So search, and if you find questions, you'll send it to us, and we will be happy to answer them.
By that, we end this session. We can have some rest again, if that's all right. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.